The way that we treat women in general with Western medicine is so backward. We're not getting to the root cause of anything.
Mm-hmm.
Someone comes in with irregular periods or painful periods, instead of being like, well, why? What's causing that inflammation? What's causing this issue to happen? They just shut off your whole endocrine system with a birth control pill.
Mm-hmm.
Just shut off all your hormones casually, because there will be no side effects to that whatsoever, which there are. And, I get it. Everybody's happy. All of a sudden you have regular pill bleeds. They're not periods because you're not ovulating. So that would be one of the biggest myths, that when you're on hormonal birth control that you're having a period. You're not. Ovulation is shut off. And in order to have a true period, we need to ovulate. That's when we make the hormones that are so important for our heart, our brain, our bones, and set us up for healthy metabolic health all the way until we're in our.
All right, Jenna, I'm so excited to have you here. I know you and I were just chit-chatting before, and how I talk a lot about using and leveraging your periods and your cycles in your business and in your life, but I don't spend a lot of time talking about like, how do we actually fix the hormones and things that are underneath and like in the background, and like learning a little bit more about like what those things are and all those shifts and changes. I know I've been in a journey recently, even just like learning even more about what things I'm doing and how I'm shifting and how those impact my hormones. So I'm so excited to be able to dive into this episode with you and to be able to chat with you. So thanks for coming on.
Yeah. Thank you, Renae. Thanks for the invite. Anytime I have the opportunity to talk about menstrual cycles, I'm always happy. So this is going to be fun.
Okay. So let's just go there. Have you always been that way? Or is this something that you like learned? Because I feel like this was not an area that I thought I would ever be talking about, or like that I would ever be teaching on. And it just feels like I intuitively was led in that direction. And so I'm curious, is this something you've always had a passion for? How did you get into that?
Yeah. Our society doesn't really give us much of a platform to celebrate the menstrual cycles. Like our culture doesn't really celebrate our bodies. So, we're kind of in the dark growing up. We don't know much about it. We're just told like, okay, well, when you start your period, here's a tampon. When you have problems with your period, here's some birth control. That's all we're given. And so no, I didn't used to think of my period fondly. I used to have a lot of issues with my period, and I made a post today on Instagram kind of about this. Your hormones aren't the problem. They are the solution. And that was the post today. Because we all look at our periods or painful periods or crazy hormones and we're like, that's the problem. That's a problem. And actually it's just revealing the problem and what's going on underneath.
Yeah.
And the beauty comes when, and I know you do this, you leverage embracing your cycles in business, and it also works in your life and your health and everything. And so, no, I had horrible periods growing up. My gosh, like when I started menstruating at 13, they were bad. I had super painful periods. And at 14, they put me on the birth control pill because they were so painful. And that, being on the birth control pill for a decade was taking on my body. And I had all of these issues. So one day I just kind of like woke up and was like, I need to fix this, So I got off the birth control pill intuitively. I mean, I didn't have a background in nutrition. My background was in international communications. I was an associate producer for like a political radio show. Like I had no idea about the body, holistic. It was like, go, 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 be productive. And I was like, I want to get off the birth control pill. And I did. And I didn't have a cycle for like 6 months. And I had really bad acne and back knee, crazy mood swings. I was like, what? I thought I was supposed to get, what's going on here? My doctor was like, my cycles are irregular. I haven't had a period in 6 months since getting off the birth control pill. They tested to see if I was pregnant. When they discovered I wasn't pregnant, they said, well, I can help you. And I said, oh, what can you do? And he gave me a birth control prescription and my heart like dropped. I was like, wait, this is not what I want. I want to my own period. And he looked at me and he was like, why? And I couldn't answer that question, but I knew I wanted to answer that question. So that's why I rerouted everything. And I kind of became like, I rerouted everything just to kind of discover selfishly how I could fix my periods. And I ended up going back to school to study nutrition. I completely rerouted my studies and fixed my cycles through diet and nutrition. And then some of my friends were like, how did you do that? And I started spreading it. And then one of my friends told me, you're the period guru. And I was like, good name. All right, I'm going to stick with that and start doing this. So
Yeah. So it's kind of funny. Like it's a kind of a similar story in the sense that like you just intuitively kind of find that thing. And I think so much of what we do, like online business and like business in general, is like we find something that we want to fix and find the solution. And when we find that solution, then we want to share it with other people and we want to help other people. And just in what I've seen and even in my own personal journey and the clients that I've worked with and things like that, there are a lot of people that are out there that have very little understanding of what's happening in their bodies. They have very little understanding of what's happening in their cycles and how things are different and how things have been normalized. Like you said, like birth control is the quick fix. Like that's where everybody goes. And if it's irregular, it's like the one solution that everybody gets. But what would you say you've seen are kind of some of those big myths, I guess, in the industry? Like I know a lot of clients that are struggling with infertility and irregular periods and endometriosis and all of these things. And the medical system as we have right now, it's just fallen short in so many ways. So what would you say are some of those big myths that you see, like people are just like, this is normal, this is the way things should be, this is the way things are, and just kind of take it as is without really digging into like, maybe there could be something different here?
Yeah. I mean, the way that we treat women in general with Western medicine is so backward. We're not getting to the root cause of anything.
Mm-hmm.
Someone comes in with irregular periods or painful periods, instead of being like, well, why? What's causing that inflammation? What's causing this issue to happen? They just shut off your whole endocrine system with a birth control pill.
Mm-hmm.
Just shut off all your hormones casually because there will be no side effects to that whatsoever, which there are. And, I get it. Everybody's happy. All of a sudden you have regular pill bleeds. They're not periods because you're not ovulating. So that would be one of the biggest myths, that when you're on hormonal birth control, that you're having a period. You're not. Ovulation is shut off. And in order to have a true period, we need to ovulate. That's when we make the hormones that are so important for our heart, our brain, our bones, and set us up for healthy metabolic health all the way until we're in our.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the first thing. Then we shut off hormones. We don't get to the root cause. That would be a myth. Yeah. So you're not having periods, you're not cycling. Every year you're not cycling. Every year you're not ovulating. You're losing about 1% bone mass. So let's think about someone who gets on the pill like I did at 14 and then gets off at, 24. Well, that's a lot of bone mass I've been losing because progesterone in order to create osteoblasts, in order to create healthy bone density. And then, okay, I'm just going to take an avatar of the myths, if you will. We'll have someone, I was an avatar, right? It happens. So many people like, that's my story. Your story is my story. My story is your story. So then, you go in at 14, 15, you're put on the pill. Then you meet that special someone, you decide to get married, and you're like, I'm not ready for a baby just yet. I'm going to stay on the birth control pill a few more years, until I get that promotion or I finish my master's or do my dissertation or whatever it is. And then you get married and you get off the birth control pill like a month before you're ready to start, maybe 3 months if you're a little bit more, and then you just expect to get pregnant right away. And then you don't. And maybe you don't ovulate for a while. You're like, what's happening? Or you're not, or if you are ovulating, you're not getting pregnant. And you see these couples who after 2 years still can't get pregnant. And then what happens? They're referred to an IVF clinic. Which I'm not saying that there's not a time and a place for IVF clinic, but it's a big money industry. And another myth would be that if you can't get pregnant within a year, you need to immediately go to an IVF clinic. That would not be the first place that I would start, because there are a lot of interventions. I see it with my clients all the time. They get pregnant all the time without going to IVF, or even after going to IVF clinics and coming back to work on these things, then they get pregnant naturally. And you have to support your body's cycles. You've been on birth control pill for a long time. You cut off that communication between your brain and your ovaries. It's like an internet signal, a Wi-Fi signal. And it takes a while for that Wi-Fi signal to get strong after you've gotten off the birth control pill. And you have to establish that hormonal rhythm. You have to replenish nutrient deficiencies that birth control causes, and before you can get pregnant. And it can take on average, the studies have shown that women who have been on birth control, it takes on average 6 months to start having a healthy cycle again. So, IVF is not always necessary. I would say a big myth is that you need to jump right into it. You don't. I would always start with diet, lifestyle interventions before going to IVF. Give that a try for 6 months.
Yeah.
Jumping into IVF.
Yeah. Well, something you said in there too, and I want to just kind of like circle back into is like, I mean, I didn't really know the info that you shared in terms of like having ovulation and that estrogen and how it builds the bone mass and density and things like that. So I would love if you could share a little bit on like, what are the benefits of actually going through having a normal, healthy cycle? Because I think there's a lot of women I've talked to that, or maybe not my clients. My clients are not in that boat, but I get comments and things of people saying that they are so happy that they don't have a cycle, or they wish they didn't have a cycle. They wish that, like having an irregular cycle is not that important to them. So what are the benefits, I guess, would you say that we maybe aren't even really thinking about, that not really aware of, like getting pregnant? Yes. Like if we're trying to get pregnant, we need a normal, healthy cycle. But what are some of those other ones that maybe people aren't aware that we need?
Well, first of all, females were designed to ovulate. That is a part of our body and part of our biology. And if you shut off a complete process of the body, there's going to be repercussions.
Mm-hmm.
It'd be like, we're not going to shut off your digestive system and going to the bathroom, which is a natural bodily function. That would be absurd, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
And it's the same thing as shutting off ovulation. For those who are like, okay, I'm so happy I don't have a period, I feel so sorry for them, because that means they probably had some pretty bad periods and never got the help that they deserved. And they were like, I'm just better off with it. That's why I'm taking this pill that gets, continuously, so I don't have a period, or I'm happy that I don't have a period anymore and then ovulation is shut off. We're really nearsighted, when it comes to our health, Western medicine. And that is why we have that vision as well. So if we're not having a normal, healthy cycle, starting when we first start menstruating all the way through in our early years, that's going to show up in our health in perimenopause, postmenopause. So the big thing is bone mass. That's one of the biggest things. I'll start with that. So when we ovulate, we make, yes, estrogen and progesterone, but progesterone is super important. We only can make that when we ovulate. So if we're not ovulating, we're not getting progesterone. And this helps calm our brain. It helps produce GABA, the neurotransmitter GABA in our brain, which keeps us calm and centered and grounded.
Mm-hmm.
Helps build up bone density. It helps nourish our hair, our skin, our nails, our thyroid health. Dr. Geraldine Pryor said every year that we don't ovulate, we lose 1% bone mass. That's significant.
Mm-hmm.
So think about what happens. So we start in our teenage years shutting off ovulation. We're losing bone density. Then we get into perimenopause and then postmenopause, when we don't make estrogen anymore. We're not ovulating, and we lose bone density very quickly.
Mm-hmm.
If we've already been losing that bone density young, growing up to that, then that puts us at more risk for osteoporosis, for hip fractures, big bone fractures that can ultimately, that's for some people when they break a hip or something, that's kind of the end of their quality of life.
Yeah.
Also, for our fertility health. So maybe if you want babies now or never, we still want to be fertile. We still want to be healthy. We still want to have healthy libido, healthy metabolism, healthy energy levels. And that's going to suffer if we're not ovulating for a long period of time. Now, if someone shuts off their ovulation and they take birth control pill for let's say 1 year, 2 years, it's probably not going to hurt them. They're probably, depending on the studies show, if you had healthy, normal cycles before getting on birth control pill, you're going to be one of those people that kind of bounces back quicker. But if you're one of those people who had irregular cycles before taking birth control, you're going to be one of those people that takes 6 months to 2 years to start ovulating again. But it's really when we take it chronically and we're shutting off our hormones for a long time. Our hormones, especially the cycling hormones that we're making, estrogen and progesterone, they are crucial, estrogen levels, for cardiovascular health. That's why women, after they go in menopause, are more likely, their risk of cardiovascular diseases and heart attacks increases significantly, because that estrogen is heart protective. So if we're not ovulating, we're not getting that estrogen. If we're not ovulating, we're not getting that progesterone. So we're losing bone mass. So we're weakening our fertility levels. Also, the repercussion on our brains, on our mental health. Progesterone, we need to lower anxiety. We need to have a calm mind. So a lot of times I have clients to me who generally perimenopause, their progesterone levels are lower. They're having so much anxiety. And the first line of treatment the doctors give are some type of anti-anxiety medicine or SSRI, when actually they just need some more progesterone. We need to work on balancing their hormones. So for someone thinking, why is it important? It's important because we need it for all of the processes in our bodies. These hormones weren't just there. They're not superfluous.
Yeah.
We weren't made these are an option. We don't need these hormones. They're behind everything, your heart, your mood, your bone health, everything, and fertility health too. Yes, if you would like to have children one day, they're behind that too. And also, if you don't want to have children, if you don't want to have a horrible perimenopause and menopause, and you don't want to feel like death through those transitions of your life, then start paying attention to your period health now, your menstrual cycle health now.
Yeah. Well, I think that's so important too, because I think, like you said, I think there is this limited view on how we see the fertility hormones and how we look at that period and how what its use is for, right? Like it's more than just getting pregnant. It's literally this cascade of everything that's happening in our bodies all month long and every single day, and how it does impact us and impacts the way we show up and the way we think and how much energy we have. And I love that you brought in like the cardiovascular and the bone health and things like that, because it does make such a huge difference in who we are and how we show up. So what would you say are some of either the biggest mistakes that you see people making that are contributing to things being off with their hormones, or the opposite side of that, those things that you feel like are like, these are the things I would highly recommend and say, number one, you have to start here doing these?
Well, first of all, I mean, you can't alter your hormones with birth control. If you want to have healthy, balanced hormones, that's just not an option. So if you're taking synthetic hormones, you will be in a state of imbalance. Birth control is an endocrine disruptor. That's what it's designed to do. It's designed to shut off your hormones and bring imbalance into the body. So there's that. So I would say avoid taking synthetic hormones, maybe opt for something like the fertility awareness method, which is charting your cycles to identify your fertile window, the approximate 8 to 11 days out of the month that you can get pregnant. You know, you really can only get pregnant about 24 hours of the month, because that's when your egg is viable when you ovulate. But because of cervical fluid, it can keep sperm alive in you for 5 days. We really like to be safe when you're doing the fertility awareness method. It's like 8 to 11 days that you want to be using a condom or avoiding vaginal intercourse. And you're using 3 signs. You're using your basal body temperature and charting your cervical mucus. And you can even do cervical position. That's 99.6% effective. I've been using that birth control method forever, since, I was 24. And if you're not comfortable with that yet, or you're trying to learn to get comfortable with that, I would say the copper IUD could be another good option if you don't have a history of autoimmunity or estrogen dominance or copper toxicity, because it's hormone free. It still impacts your hormone levels because it does impact your estrogen, because copper and estrogen have a symbiotic relationship. Or if you must, get on something like a low dose Mirena or mini pill would be the third best option. I'm using very lightly because it's still, the progestin only birth control has some of the worst side effects with anxiety and depression and suicide rates. So increased, especially in teenagers.
I'll just throw in there. They put me on that one after I had my first baby, and I was like on it for, I don't even think a full month. And I was like, I cannot do this. Like, this is not going to work. Like, can't handle this. Like, so I totally agree. Like, even just that little bit of whatever they say, like, it just was enough to be like, I cannot do this anymore.
It's because, and I'm so sorry to experience that. And that's because that progestin is not progesterone. It's synthetic progesterone. It's called progestin. And it actually, if you look at the chemical compound, how it's structured, it has, it's an androgen. And it, instead of where progesterone, brings, calms anxiety, nourishes the brain, nourishes your hair, your thyroid. Progestin can make you lose hair, have anxiety. It's like the complete opposite of the spectrum.
Yeah.
And so I would say, first one, if you want to balance your hormones, if you want to be vibrant health, if you want to be a cycling, vibrant female and channel the 4 phases and just be in your prime and embody what it is to be a female, a cycling female, I would say definitely ditch the synthetic hormones and working on living in sync with nature and your body. So the circadian rhythm outside of you and the infradian rhythm inside of you, and working on getting, sunshine exposure in the morning and limiting blue light at night, having a healthy bedtime routine, charting the 4 phases of your menstrual cycle, knowing where you are, pinpointing when ovulation took place. And are you ovulating? Am I ovulating? Bringing awareness to that. I would think that would be really great places to start.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Like you said, avoiding the synthetic hormones and adding in sunshine and daylight, or like avoiding the blue light and stuff. Like, are there any foods or anything that people should eat or any things that they should add in that way? Because I know that there is a lot. And actually, I would be kind of curious to hear your take on like intermittent fasting, because I've heard from so many for so many years, like intermittent fasting doing negative and harmful effects on their hormones. And then in recent years, I've heard people talking about how to do it with the feminine cycle and the hormones that we have there. So I would just love if there's anything like nutritionally or the way we eat and how we eat that would make such a huge impact for that.
So, intermittent fasting is not where I would start. If you're not making 85% of your meals at home, if you're not lifting weights 3 times a week, if you're not getting sunshine exposure within 2 hours of waking up, if you don't have a healthy bedtime routine, you have no place with intermittent fasting. No offense. I'm just going to give it to you harsh. Like, it's really easy to like, oh, I just drink coffee until noon. Yeah, that's super simple. You're living off your stress hormones. You're going on, you're like, coffee, coffee, coffee. I feel like Superwoman. Until you don't, and until like you're in this state of exhaustion and deficiency and all of your hormones are depleted and your adrenals are messed up. So, most of the studies have been on college age males. I know there's been a few studies on women with PCOS and using it therapeutically. And other people have popped up talking about cycling with your menstrual cycle. So first of all, in 2012, I started intermittent fasting back when like nobody was, and people were like, that's an eating disorder. When I told people what I was doing, I'm like, no, it's called intermittent fasting. Dave Asprey from Bulletproof does it. People are like, you are crazy. Like I knew no one else doing it. And I did it for like 5 years, destroyed my health, like absolutely wrecked me. And at first I felt like so great, flying high, I was doing these workouts, fasted, like I'm invincible. And then I stopped menstruating, I stopped ovulating, I got just joint pain, my body fell apart. Oh, I think a 12-hour, first of all, for everyone, 12 hours is kind of like the minimum. We should all be going 12 hours without eating. That's just kind of like, 8 to 8 or 7 to 7. Our digestive system needs a break. So 12 hours is like the longest fast that I can recommend that everybody could do. That's just basic. That's kind of going back to like how we're designed. Instead of like people nowadays, we just like are like chronic snackers. We have refrigerators now to keep everything cold. We just snack all day long. So I say 12 hours. If somebody is in peak health, their hormones are great. They've had them tested. Their hormones are great. Their adrenals are great. Their thyroid is great. They're doing great. And they're like, man, like their appetite, their metabolism, their sex drive, everything is great. And I say, okay, you could do 14 to 16-hour fasts, a few days a week. That would probably be super supportive. But if not, I would not recommend it. Women that are in perimenopause and postmenopause can do more fasting than women in cycling and fertile bearing. When we're in fertile bearing years, our bodies just need more nutrition. We're not designed for long fast. Even if you don't want a baby, that's just what our bodies are designed to do. So if you want to support them, I find the best way is to have an early dinner. Anyone can do this. Have an early dinner. Anyone can do this. It's just much harder than skipping breakfast. No one wants to skip breakfast. No one wants to skip a late night dinner. Everybody wants to skip breakfast, right? So the really healthy way to do this is to have an early dinner, give yourself at least, 2 to 3 hours before you go to bed to eat, maybe even go for a 10-minute walk after you eat to help, balance your blood sugar levels after eating. And then within 1 to 2 hours, depending on your situation, everybody's different. And I can't, make a blanket statement without knowing everybody's unique, blueprint. But within 1 to 2 hours, having breakfast with at least 30 grams of protein. Women, if you're listening to this and you're infertile, you're a cycling female, then that's really most supportive for you. And so you can still get a 12 to 14-hour fast that way. If you eat dinner at 7 and you have breakfast at 9, I mean, it's easily doable, but the long intermittent fasts are going to be a hard no for me. Yeah. But I know it's really nuanced because some people say do it. Some people say don't. My cousin just came over for Christmas and she lost like 25 pounds. None of my family listens to me. It's so frustrating. All of my female family members drink coffee for breakfast. And I'm just like, oh my God, I'm the only one like eating this healthy breakfast. But, she lost all this weight. And I'm like, what are you doing? She's like, well, I'm not eating any carbs, 0 carbs. And I don't eat breakfast until 12. I just drink coffee. And I'm just like, and then she's like, but I'm losing hair. And I was like, I wonder why. And I was like, you need to eat breakfast. And she's lost a lot of weight. Yeah, but like she's losing her hair. So,
Yeah. I mean, it's like this balance because in society, there's a right way and a wrong way. I'm using quotation marks because everybody has their one right way, and everybody says that this is the one right way. And then it's contradicting to this other thing that's over here, that this is the right way. And so I think it is sometimes confusing for people and women in general. And even just going to that fact, like what you said earlier about like the studies, particularly around intermittent fasting being particularly done on men, a lot of studies were done predominantly just on men. And so there's this hard balance of trying to figure it out and like understanding what is the best way. And I think ultimately, like what I really harp and like kind of focus in on is helping women learn to listen to their bodies. Like if we start to like listen to what actually our bodies are needing, like I know right now I'm in that luteal phase and my body is like, I want more carbs. I need more food. Like I notice like in the morning, like I'm hungry. Whereas like a week or so ago, I wasn't hungry when I first woke up, but like yesterday I was like, oh my gosh, my stomach is grumbling before I even get up out of bed. Right. And so I think it's different about learning to come back and listen to what your body is actually telling you and what your body needs. And if we do really well honoring that and supporting our body, then it won't send us just all these cravings of high loads of sugar or whatever. Like it kind of comes back to like helping support where your body's at. But I think the biggest thing is that most of us don't know how to listen to that. Most of us haven't been taught to listen to our bodies. And so what we're hearing and what we think is we're misinterpreting. And so there's a lot of a big learning curve in that.
And what we're also hearing is that we are small men and we should just do what the studies show that works for males. And we're taught to be go, 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 go all the time. And that's just not how it works. Like when you said, there's all these different diets, some might be good for some and others. And what's good for you is going to change because where you are in your cycle, where you are in your age, where are you pregnant? Are you postpartum? So it's going to change. So we have to get some level of intuition. We have to kind of understand what our bodies need and listen to our bodies and really strengthen that line of communication. And it really does start with charting your menstrual cycle. 100% believe that because you're bringing awareness inward into your cycles. And it's so interesting how people who have irregular cycles, when they start charting them, they start to regulate.
Yeah.
Just because they're bringing awareness to it. And where attention goes, energy flows. And that's what we're nourishing. So I think Dr. Joe Dispenza says that. I think that's where I got that from.
Yeah.
But it's super important. We're cyclical beings and we're in a constant state of change throughout our whole lives. As females more than men, and it's a beautiful thing. But I feel like our culture has made it to be like a curse. Like, oh, she's just hysterical. She's hormonal. She's this. And actually it's a really incredible thing how we're designed and how we ebb and flow and all the incredible accomplishments our bodies as females that we do.
For sure. For sure. And even there, like you highlighted something I have noticed too, is that oftentimes, like a lot of the clients I work with, they want a very prescribed sort of way of using their cycle. They want it to, like, they want to know, okay, this goes here, this goes here, this is how this works. Like, and it's very predictable. But what I've noticed and what you just highlighted there is that it does change. Like we change, like our bodies evolve, and the stress that we had last month is going to impact the way our cycle shows up this next month. And that it's not this very prescribed thing, that at the base part of that is like really learning to listen and honor our bodies exactly where it's at, and honoring those ebbs and flows and knowing how to adjust and how to accommodate to them versus feeling like it is in this like very prescribed, rigid sort of way, which I think is more of that masculine kind of idea.
We are in a masculine culture. So to step into that feminine place, we really have to actually seek it out.
Yeah.
And, how you were saying just about the hard rules and how your clients, okay, this. I think that's what we have to start with. Yeah. And I start like this with my clients too, because most of the women coming to me are CEOs or business women, and their minds are thinking more masculine because they're in a masculine environment and a masculine setting. And they have a CEO kind of brain, that's just how we're wired, especially to as entrepreneurs or whatever. And so giving them a plan, okay, do this, the structure. In the beginning, I think that serves a place.
Yeah.
That's probably how I started. Like I needed to know all the science behind it. I needed to know everything logical. I needed to know how my body worked. And then I had these rules. Okay, I only eat these foods during follicular and this during this and this and that. And I do all this. And then after kind of learning that language and everything, now I listen to my body. It's just like a yes?
Mm-hmm.
Am I getting a yes? Am I getting a no? And it's just a language you start to learn, kind of like when you bring someone's attention to, I want you to eat 100 grams of protein a day. So then,
Mm-hmm.
they write it out every day. They log their food. Then they do that maybe for a month. And then they start to understand what 30 grams of protein at a meal looks like. They don't need to start logging it anymore. So it's
Mm-hmm.
just learning a new language. And I wish that we would start teaching this sooner
Mm-hmm.
to our children. And I would
Yeah.
like more mainstream that this is the conversations we have with our sons and our daughters
Yeah.
at an early age.
Yeah. Yeah. And I do think like this could be a whole nother conversation, but I do think the next generation is approaching it much differently. Like I have a 12-year-old and hearing her talk about like the conversations that they have around it at school, I think is so empowering to hear that it's not coming with a lot of the shame and the trauma and things like that I feel like I grew up with. And so it's kind of helping to preserve that and protect that as they continue on. Because it does look different, I feel like for me than it did when I like her whole class is like, she knows like when every other girl's had her period, she knows when she's on her period. Like she said, the boys know, like, it's just a totally different conversation and environment than when I grew up. And I think helping to kind of normalize that for them as they continue to grow is very important.
That is important.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
beautiful. I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah. So I know you have some resources and some tools that people can go over and grab that they can access and learn a little bit more about their cycle, learn more about honoring their cycle and things like that. So do you want to go ahead and share some more about those?
Yeah. So I think a really great place to start is my period ebook. I have a free period ebook on my website. And it just briefly discusses the 4 phases of the menstrual cycle. And it dives a little bit more into what I was discussing about charting your fertility signs. And
Mm-hmm.
so you can confirm when ovulation has taken place. It shows a sample graph. And I do talk about a few key supplements that can be great for hormone balance and a few, key foods that are supportive for hormone balance in there. So it's a really great place if you want to dip your toes a little bit more in the water and understand your whole entire menstrual cycle, which includes ovulation. So you can get that on my website, or I can give you the link. Maybe you can put it in the show notes.
For sure. Yeah, we'll put it there. And then if anybody wants to follow you on Instagram or anything like that, where can they find you?
I'm at the Period Guru. Yeah. So come follow me on Instagram. I'm very active there, and say hi.
Awesome. Anything else that you feel like we left out or that you want to make sure that we add in for people before they go?
Yes. It's all about ovulation, not
Mm.
not your period. So I get, a lot of DMs. Oh my God, my period's 3 days late. Is everything okay? Or friends and family. I had a weird period this month. I don't care about when your period was, actually. I don't care about when you're bleeding. It's very easy for us to notice the period because there is
There.
blood. Ovulation. My question is, well, when did you ovulate? And they're all like, I don't know. Did you ovulate? Oh, I don't know. I'm like, well, maybe your period wasn't late.
Yeah.
Because there's no late period. There's only late ovulation or delayed ovulation. And ovulation is the true, as Dr. Laura Brydon says, the true rock star of the menstrual cycle. And it is. I really should be called the, ovulation guru, because it is way more important than the period. So my advice to y'all is, hey, everyone, confirm ovulation. Start paying attention to ovulation. Are you ovulating? When are you ovulating? That's going to give you so much insight on your health.
So good. Yes. So good. And it is amazing how many people don't know that, like, they don't know how to track their ovulation. They don't know the signs, the symptoms. And I think that that's a really great place for them to go connect with you and get all that information. So Jenna, thank you so much for hopping on this episode. It was awesome. And I hope you have a fabulous day.
Thank you, Renae.
Alrighty, friend. It was such a pleasure to hang out with you today on today's episode. I cannot wait to do it again with you next week, so save the date. We'll meet here again. Until then, if you haven't already, be sure to leave a review on the podcast, letting us know what you love about this podcast. After you do that, submit a screenshot of that to support@renaefieck.com, and you will be entered in to be able to have one of our free spots inside of Your Cycle 101, our foundational program, letting you know the ins and the outs of how your cycle impacts you every single day. Alrighty, friend, I will see you next week.